The solution from the White House to what ails us is more spending. The president in his State of the Union address called for more spending on construction. Those same shovel-ready jobs even he admitted didn't work. The influential market weekly Barron's, its cover story this week, blasted President Obama's policies. It said if we do what the White House wants, we're headed for total economic collapse, just like Greece. Next, stop Greece. It says if we fail to rein in spending and increase taxes starting now, the U.S. in 22 years could be in worse shape than Greece is today. Barron's also points out that hiking taxes won't get us out of the mess either. Washington needs to stop thinking that it's the solution and start realizing it's the problem. For more on this, I want to bring in my panel. Stan Veuger is an economist at the American Enterprise Institute, and Ford O'Connell is the chairman of the Civic Forum PAC. Ford, I'll start with you. You know, what we're talking about here at the end of the day is $1.2 trillion in spending cuts over 10 years. The administration's been complaining about this for a week now, what it will mean to the middle class, and yet the president's out playing golf. What do you make of that?
The president wants a sequester to happen because he wants to paint Republicans as uncaring people. The one thing about the sequester we should note is it's really, we're talking about lopping off 2.4% in federal spending this year, $85 billion out of $3.6 trillion, and then $1.2 trillion over the next 10 years. 2.4% is nothing. It's not going to send the world markets down. But what it does, the way the sequester is set up, is it targets very popular and vital programs like defense and health safety. And right now, the president is overhyping
small business
this.
Loans, FDA inspections.
Exactly.
Well, let's turn to Stan for a second. What do you make of these cuts? You've described them as only 0.2% of our spending over the next 10 years. Not a big deal. Yet the president paints it as if it were, you know, life and death. What do you make of it?
It's 2% of spending. Of course, for President Obama, every single spending cut is one too many. And the problem is that the executive branch, of course, is in charge of choosing exactly how this spending is going to be allocated, and they'll make sure to pick the most painful cuts they can find, as Ford just pointed out. As to the Congress and the president being out of town for the next 10 days, I mean, they reach agreement on the last possible day anyway, so as long as they're back on February 28th, I think we'll be fine.
You know, Senator Schumer from New York predicting that the GOP will join the Democrats in closing loopholes and making spending cuts. Ford, to you, does he have it right? Let's hear exactly what he said, and then you can respond.
I think that Democrats have the high ground, both substantively and politically, and we will win on this issue. I believe, just like on the fiscal cliff, Republicans will come on board. They have no choice.
Ford, what do you say?
Senator Schumer has it a little bit off. He's right that we want to close the loopholes, but we want to bring certainty to the economy, particularly for the private sector. We want tax reform. What Chuck Schumer is really talking about is closing loopholes so that our Keynesian president can spend more and create more uncertainty and leave a 1.4% growth.
Ford, what he's saying is that the GOP will bend over once again and do what the Democrats want. Do you agree? Will they be forced to do what the president wants?
They will be forced to do what the president wants if they don't get the story straight and start explaining to the American people why the president is sending us onto a path of uncertainty, out of control spending, which could weaken the dollar and obviously promote no growth. What the GOP needs to do is explain in context why it's making each move and better connect with the American people about how each thing will affect them on a daily basis.
Stan, there is a communication problem, that is for sure. Stan, to you, what has been the cost to the economy of what's gone on in Washington? The fact that Congress can't get together on anything, the president doesn't talk to leaders in Congress, they don't talk to the president. What does it cost this economy?
Well, I think the fact that we now have sort of a looming fiscal cliff every other week has definitely created a massive amount of policy uncertainty. And I think that deters investment, it reduces consumer confidence, and I'm sure the economic damage has been serious. The problem, of course, is that
it's unclear that it's in some way. I mean, isn't there a way of saying, hey, the hit has been, you know, 1% of GDP, 2%? I mean, can you say
it's hard to quantify. I think the sort of consensus estimates in the economics literature is that it's maybe 1 or 2 percentage points of GDP last year and the year before. The problem is it's hard to see what the alternative is, because of course, as long as the president won't agree to any agreement that doesn't involve basically a bunch of tax cuts, this may be the best option.
Well, Ford, to you, I mean, the way forward is so hard to see here because it's one fight after another fight. We're going to be doing this all year long. And I have to tell you, I think the American people have precious little patience for it. You know, they just don't want to hear it anymore. Where does this all lead?
Well, it means that the GOP really has to explain it and get its ducks in a row right now, because I don't think a lot of people really understand what sequestration means, what the fiscal cliff means, and everything else, and how this is going to affect them. And right now, the president has the higher ground because he's better at explaining the crisis as it affects them. And the GOP needs to explain that the president is really hurting them over the long term. And, and if the president doesn't negotiate...
You know, if people don't understand it, it hasn't been for a lack of us talking about it all the time. Quick response from both of you. So what the president and the White House say: Head Start will be decimated. Small business loans will stop completely. FDA inspections, a thing of the past. National Institute of Health, those projects done. Are they just overplaying their hand? First to you, Ford, and then Stan.
Absolutely, they're overplaying their hand. We faced a similar sequester situation in 1991, and really these cuts are up to the agencies. It's directed by the OMB. Trust me, he's trying to make it as bad as possible to make Republicans look like bad guys, Jerry.
Stan.
So I agree with that, but I do think that means that politically he's going to have the upper hand a month from now.
Gives him a little power, doesn't it? I mean, it's a leverage tool with voters. Stan and Ford, thanks for coming on tonight. Really appreciate your help. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.